Let me tell you something crazy, because I realized it this morning. Russell Wilson is doing something that no player in NFL history has ever done. He might be playing himself out of the Hall of Fame. Think about this for a second. We all thought Russell Wilson was a Hall of Famer. There are 7 Hall of Famers of the generation, but only one, Russell Wilson, is hanging on by a thread. See, if you look from the outside in, Russ surely looks like a Hall of Famer, but if you zoom in closer to the people closest to him, you might start to have some doubts. His head coach, Pete Carroll, he drafted him. But that same head coach, Pete Carroll, was willing to let Russell Wilson go in Russell Wilson's prime. That's not a Hall of Famer decision. Think about his running back. You know Marshawn Lynch, beast mode? Marshawn Lynch said, yo, I ain't calling you if I can't call you directly, especially if I went to war with you. Marshawn Lynch cannot even get a hold of Russell Wilson. That's not a Hall of Fame action. Think about Richard Sherman, maybe the greatest defensive back of this generation or of the last decade at least. Richard Sherman says, you have not been anywhere close to a Super Bowl letting Russ cook. But maybe they are just estranged teammates, former coaches that Russell Wilson didn't get along with. We can use our own eyeballs and see who is Russell Wilson now in Denver with the Broncos. Is he really a Hall of Famer where he is in his new location? But the numbers don't look so good, y'all. With the Broncos worst in points per game, with the Broncos 31st in completion percentage, and out of the season, he only has 8 touchdown passes. That's the fewest of any quarterback that started 10 or more games. So I've reached one very simple conclusion. Either Russell Wilson is playing himself out of the Hall of Fame, or he was never a Hall of Famer to begin with. Coming to the desk to have a very interesting conversation, because, Joy, this has really plagued my mind. Russell Wilson and the Hall of Fame status, with as bad as the season has been. Is Russ playing himself out of the Hall of Fame?
Well, I think you just said it. If we're starting to question it, was he ever in the Hall of Fame to begin with? Because to me, if you have a Hall of Fame resume, there's nothing that you can do past that resume to change it. Michael Jordan went to the Wizards. We don't think very highly of those years. But nobody was like, oh, it's out of the Hall of Fame now because it went badly with Washington. No, his legacy was cemented. So really the question is, was Russ's legacy cemented with what he did in Seattle? I didn't think there was anything that could happen in Denver to make me question that. But I also, if I'm honest, was projecting that he was going to keep playing at the level that he was playing in Seattle.
That's the thing.
So now that this has happened, I think we're all kind of re-examining and looking back on it with a little bit of a closer microscope. Now, whether that's fair or not, again, I don't like fair. This is what it is. This is a results-driven business. But if we really look at the entirety of Russ's career in Seattle, is it enough to get into the Hall of Fame, or were we projecting that he was going to continue playing at the level he was playing in Seattle and Denver, which, of course, we all were. Certainly Denver was, giving him $240 million, and things have gone badly. I don't think it's solidified on the other end. Obviously, they're going to play out this contract because they don't have a choice, and if he turns things around, we can revisit this conversation. But I do think overall what's happened in Denver has made me look at Russ's career and the trajectory of it completely different.
2-5, chime in on that. Is Russell Wilson playing himself out of the Hall?
I'm going to say no. And the reason why is because what he did in Seattle was phenomenal. Yep. Like he's having a bad couple games, having a bad year this year, but he did a lot of good things in Seattle. Let's look at it. He ranks 21st of all time in passing yards. Yep. He ranks 13th all time in passing touchdowns. Yep. He ranks 15th all time in wins. He led his team 8 times to the playoffs yep. out of 10 years. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler, right? So for us to say that, oh, he's having a bad year, he won't be a Hall of Famer, no. Now, granted, I did think that he would play a lot better, and we would probably see some more of them Seattle stats and Denver, which could help the case out more. But I think if Russell comes back next year, right, I'm going to say the year's over. I'm betting against him this year. But if he comes back next year and balls out and gives us some of that Seattle Russell Wilson that we know about, that we've seen, that we all fell in love with, we won't have this conversation anymore. And he will be a Hall of Famer, and we will forget about this bad year he's having this year, and we will blame everything on Hackett.
Let me ask you this, though, Shady. It is the Hall of Fame, okay, not the Hall of Good, not even the Hall of Really Good. Okay. It's the Hall of Fame. Right. When you look at Russell Wilson's career, there are only so many things that he individually, or something that you could predominantly say individually, can be famous for. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson is most famous, unfortunately, for throwing a pick at the goal line in order to win the Super Bowl. Second most famous for winning a Super Bowl. So when you think about the trajectory of his career, Is what he did in Seattle, in your mind, enough? Or does he need to do more? Does he need that season next season to ball out, to get him back where we think he was?
I think if he has a good year next year and the years to come, I think it makes that vision a lot more clear. Oh, okay, we can really see it. I do think that with these numbers I just talked about, he has a shot, right? I mean, after Matthew Stafford won a championship last year, that was a big question. Is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer? So he has a Super Bowl.
Yep.
He's been in the Super Bowl twice. He has these numbers. He has the winning. He has the yards. I think if he can add on a little bit and has a better year, I think it makes that vision a lot clearer.
I think the thing that makes this so unique is, like, the depth of the crater. Because, like, don't forget, it's pretty normal to see even a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback have a dip. Aaron Rodgers did it. They made the switch from Mike McCarthy to Matt LaFleur. Drew Brees threw up some 7 and 9 years. They go and draft Alvin Kamara. The Saints got a lot better. Really, the 2 Super Bowl years are Eli Manning's only, like, great years. You know what I mean? Like, this is common. It's not common to see you sitting this far out of the playoff race, this bad on offense. 14 points a game?
Yep.
That's the worst scoring offense since the 2000 Browns. Back when the Browns were like an expansion team. That's the territory that Russell Wilson is in right now. So you're right. Joy said it perfectly. I thought of Russ as a Hall of Famer because I thought I could count on this extending for 4, 5, 6 more years. That's what you get from a franchise quarterback. I don't think you can close the door on that yet. He just turned 34 years old, like very recently. He's young by quarterback standards. I know, like, this sounds goofy right now because that's how bad the Broncos look, but they can't get away from this contract. Like, the earliest out is like 2026. So it is in the Broncos' absolute best interest to do everything they can to make this work. So I'm not going to close the book on it, but I can't remember watching a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback struggle to this degree. I think that's what makes it different. Like, most years it's like, oh, you know, they went 7 and 9, but they'll have some good draft picks and they can turn this thing around. This is not that.
You also, I haven't seen somebody be this bad in what's supposed to be their prime. Like, that's what's so fascinating to me about Russell Wilson. He is only 34 years old for a quarterback that is no longer old, but we have to be honest. We cannot let Tom Brady change our opinion of the way quarterbacks are supposed to play. Quarterbacks are not supposed to still be great players 38, 39, 40 years old. There's Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers has done it the last 2.
I disagree with you
Please
there.
elaborate.
Of quarterbacks of that caliber, and okay, we won't say Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer, but the type of quarterback that is capable of Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl. Aaron Rodgers won MVPs in his late 30s, back-to-back. Drew Brees played up until the age of 40 and got the Saints very close to a second Super Bowl doing it. No. I've never seen a quarterback bounce back from looking this bad. But we have seen quarterbacks up into their late 30s playing well. It's just a matter of, has Russell Wilson lost it completely? Well. That's the question for me.
Jordan, break this down, because you asked a great question. Has Russ lost it completely? Do you have confidence in Russell Wilson being able to bounce back? Because if we're saying his Hall of Fame career or trajectory is dependent upon his bounce back, that's what Shady's saying. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Can Russ bounce back? Just based upon what you know about the game of football, what you know about with your eyeball test.
I mean, I think absolutely. I'm not bailing on Russ. I'm fascinated by how bad they are. I don't understand it. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. When you look at the bottom of the league, like the teams that are in their caliber, there's an explanation for all of them. Mm-hmm. The Steelers are in a rebuild. They have a rookie quarterback. The Texans, we know what's going on with the Texans, right? They need talent. They're kind of in a rebuild as well, but they play hard, right? Like, there's something there. You can explain that. Who else is at the bottom of the league? Carolina, Jacksonville. All these teams are like in a rebuild. They have new coaches that are trying to adjust the culture. There's something there where we're like, okay, they're bad, but we understand why. We know what they're building towards. We can explain this. We were talking about the Broncos competing for a championship this year. They're at the bottom of the league. So I just refuse to, and maybe I'm naive, but I refuse to believe that this is how we're going to see Russ's career end. I don't believe it. I've seen him be too consistent for too long to believe that this drop-off is something that cannot be corrected, because it's so dramatic.
It's crazy.
Outside of my affinity for Russell Wilson as a human being and knowing him to some degree personally, I think Russell Wilson's done. Like, if I didn't know him personally, I would go way harder. But because I do, I'm not going to go as hard as I want to. Reason I think he's done, Russell Wilson, the first time I ever met him was on a football field. Before we were in the National Football League. It was at the Senior Bowl, an all-star game post-college. The opposing team's quarterbacks were Kellen Moore, current offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, and Russell Wilson. Kellen Moore, easy to defend. Not because he wasn't brilliant, because he couldn't run. And as a linebacker, there's nothing worse than, Shady, you know this as well, is having to get deep into a drop, and next thing you know, quarterback tucks it, and he's everywhere. That's what Russell Wilson could do best. Y'all realize Russell Wilson in his career averages 5.2 yards per carry. It's a lot. Right now, he's averaging 3.6. So Russell Wilson's second greatest attribute is no longer prevalent. More than anything, Russell Wilson was the most dangerous passer on the roll and on the move. If you're now going to make Russell Wilson just a 5'11 pocket passer, somebody he's never truly been, that is why I don't think we will see the same Russell Wilson.
I don't blame that on Russ. I blame that on the coaching, right? Like, so you talked about him not running as much. You talked about him not getting the rollouts, and how effective he was doing that. Or they're not doing that. So I think this year is like a learning curve. Okay, this is what he does bad. This is what he does good. You take that, and then going to next year, it's self-scouting. That's what they call it. Mm-hmm. Now, everything we're going to do is it helps him out in offense. Let's get him more on rollouts, et cetera. We talked about Justin Fields, right? How he looked bad in the beginning of the year, and then they found something he could do good as kind of running the ball, not throwing it. And they got more rollouts for him. Same thing, Russell Wilson. Find out what he does best and get to that.
But don't you think there's a point where physically you can't do it anymore? What do I mean? 2 years ago, Russell Wilson, 530 yards rushing. Last year in Seattle, clearly he missed games, 180 yards rushing. This year, he pulled a hamstring. That's like not young boy behavior. You know what it is. You pulling a hamstring, that's I'm getting older behavior. He pulled a hamstring, missed a game because of it, has 130 yards rushing on the season. 2.5, is it on the coaches to be like, hey, Russ, go run? Or do you just think once you hit 34, you might not have them young legs anymore.
I don't see that. I mean, he's a quarterback. It's not like he's like out there like running and.
He led his team in rushing though in his third year.
Well, his third year. Yep. So now looking now, it's like that was more off a run.
Yep. Zone reads, all that.
Zone reads, et cetera. Options and all that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the scrambling. He can do that. I mean, the guys on planes stretching and doing jump arounds and jumping jacks and
high knees.
High knees for 3 hours. You telling me he can't scramble for first downs? I'm talking about like broken plays. Okay, nobody's open. There's lanes. He can scramble for 5-6 yards.
Yes, I just don't think he can do it with the same ability that he used.
He don't need to do it, but he don't need to though. We don't need him to be the same Russell that's going for 25 yards. Listen, everybody can't be Jalen Hurts. Everybody can't
be. But
he
was. That's what's so fascinating.
But he's not that no more. I can name a million quarterbacks that scramble that's not Jalen Hurts. Come on.
Do you think Russell Wilson can read a defense and make throws that need to be made by a starting quarterback?
Yes, but from what I've heard inside the Seahawks locker room and outside is this. Russell Wilson is an off-time quarterback.
Yeah.
And most people know that. He's an off-time quarterback. True. Very simply put, on time, 3-step drop ball out, 5-step drop ball out, 7-step drop ball out. That's not Russell Wilson.
But you can do both, though.
You can, but he hasn't shown the ability to. DK Metcalf, when he got to Seattle, he was like, yo, what's this? Ball ain't out in 3, 5, or 7. He had to partner up with Tyler Lockett to figure out what exactly is going on with Russ. If Russell Wilson is best at being an off-time QB, but he can no longer get off time, then it's all bad for the Denver Broncos.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.